You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron. Now here's your host, Ethan Hristodoulou.
Welcome back to the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Hristodoulou, and happy Monday to you all, my UFL fans. The UFL Championship has officially been set as the Birmingham Stallions and San Antonio Brahmas will meet at the Dome in St. Louis to go head-to-head and find out who is the best of the spring football league. We have a lot to discuss. We're going to recap this past weekend's games, kind of break them down a little bit, talk about what happened. So I invite you all to do the same in the comments section down below. We'll preview the championship game a little bit later in the week, but right now it's all about this past weekend and just kind of taking in what we gathered from those two games. So again, comment down below. I want to hear from you all, but we'll start first with the first matchup of the weekend. That was the Michigan Panthers going into Birmingham to take on the Stallions, where the Stallions wound up winning 31-18 in a contest that got very far apart in the fourth quarter. But honestly, it was definitely one of those like tale of two halves kind of games here. You had the first half where Michigan comes out and they came out swinging, although maybe not as aggressively as you would have hoped, because yes, they came in 5 straight scoring drives to open up the game. Michigan held Birmingham to just 3 points on their first 4 opening drives, and it included a turnover on downs to open up the game. They had a strip sack as well that set up some points, but ultimately, their over-reliance, and this is something that we've seen from Michigan basically throughout the entirety of this season, on their kicker, Jake Bates, and an inability to just finish off drives, especially when you're getting into a situation where you get strip sacks close to the opponent's end zone, and you're settling field goal after field goal after field goal. It started great. You had that first touchdown, but then 4 straight field goals followed by a 5th missed field goal attempt as well. The undoing of Michigan was something that I think doubters of the Panthers were probably bringing up more often than not over the last few weeks as we got closer and closer to playoff time and whether or not Michigan was going to be able to win this football game. Their undoing wound up being just that inability to finish and get into the end zone, especially like when you look at that strip sack that set them up fairly close in their opponent's territory. That's the type of drive that you got to get in the end zone for, and you have to get those 6 points. You can't just be settling for 3 again and again and again. And from there, following that second half and those 18 points that they put together, that was it. Ultimately, Michigan fell flat on their face. The offense just kind of tanked from there, could not really muster anything up. Quarterback play kind of devolved on Danny Etling's end through the second half of the game here, and things started to flip late in that second quarter. Obviously, Birmingham found a little bit of rhythm. They had the 50-yard strike from Adrian Martinez to Jordan Thomas for 50 yards and a score. A couple of field goals to go along with that touchdown as well, leading to 12 points in the second quarter in a game that got close, but, Michigan still had a lead. But it really was that second half where things just started to kind of turn on its head and unravel, and it almost did for Birmingham as well. But we had like a really ugly third quarter. Things just got way out of hand. 6 offensive turnovers. You had 4 interceptions and 2 fumbles from both sides combined. Teams, they were just grappling with the mistakes, trying to figure out who was going to come out on top. But ultimately, the swing that happened was that Daniel Isom late in the third quarter interception. He took it for 6. Put Birmingham up 24-18, and at that point, the offensive woes continuing to mount for Michigan led way for a big push in the fourth quarter by Birmingham. You had a couple of touchdown passes leading to a wide 31-18 margin where you have Matt Corral come in as Adrian Martinez left the game. He comes in, touchdown pass to Amari Rogers, touchdown pass to Ricky Person Jr., and Birmingham's defense really put the clamps down. Even the special teams stepping up blocked field goal late in the game, just ultimately shutting everything down. You wind up now with Birmingham victorious and just an absolute kind of nightmare end to the season where, again, a lot of the doubters voicing the fact that Michigan just could not finish drives, ultimately leading to this loss here. Because if even just a couple of those 5 first quarter drives that went for points ended in touchdowns, we're having a very different conversation here today potentially. But unfortunately, when you're just relying on your kicker drive after drive after drive. I would have liked to see maybe just a little bit more of an aggressive type of offense, especially it's the conference championship. It's win or go home. Everything is on the table. You have got to be aggressive, and that just settling for three, it just did not quite do it for me. I would have loved to see Michigan get a little bit more aggressive and see Mike Nolan push the envelope, but it is what it is. You can't do anything about it now. Again, Birmingham coming away with the big win. They're going now to their third straight spring championship game in the last 3 years, but there is now a big question coming into this football game. What exactly happens now at quarterback with the Birmingham Stallions? This is not necessarily the time of year that you want to be answering that question. You would hope that this doesn't wind up affecting anything too much. It's not like Matt Corral came in and was perfect. He did start out a little bit rocky, but then found a rhythm and ultimately helped the Birmingham Stallions to a pretty comfortable finish late in the fourth quarter. But that is something that you now have to think about coming out of this game here. You weathered the storm against a pretty good defense in Michigan. And again, that first half, Michigan's defense looked phenomenal. They were doing a great job being disruptive. And even in that third quarter, taking advantage of miscues by the Birmingham's offense. But ultimately, now you go out of this game, yes, victorious, but you now have to wonder, what the heck are we going to do at quarterback? I'm sure Birmingham Stallions fans, you guys are as confident as you always are. You're probably not too worried about it, but it is something that I'm sure is going to be sitting in the back of your mind, and something we'll just kind of have to wait and find out as we work our way through the week. But aside from that, Birmingham looking as good as ever, 31 points, even with a massively rocky third quarter. The Stallions are rocking and rolling as they have been the last 3 years, and at this point, it's hard not to want to root for that three-peat and that historical run there, but there is another team that may have something to say about that, and we're going to now shift focus. We'll take a look at the conference championship on the XFL side as San Antonio finally breaking free, losing their first 2 games to the St. Louis Battlehawks. You now have the Brahmas winning 25-15 as the XFL representative for this championship, and my genuine concerns that I had going into this matchup in regards to San Antonio's offense. And I even kind of mentioned it. I thought, maybe they were a little bit overblown. I know they didn't have their star running backs last weekend, but Chase Garbers did not look great. Quentin Dormady had to come in as well, and I was not too excited to I didn't leave that game very, positive in regards to what we saw from them. And again, I know they didn't have star players on the field, but I was still a little bit worried about how that game was going to shake out. But San Antonio came in and they got the lead, and they never really looked back. And there was never really a point in that matchup where I really felt like St. Louis was going to threaten to come back and steal the game from them. And that's kind of unfortunate for St. Louis, and we'll talk about that in a second here. But from the offense to the defense, San Antonio looked as complete as they have all season. And if you're a Stallions fan, this is one of the only team that this is the one in 9-1, now 10-1 that you're looking at right now that took away your perfect season and are coming off of arguably their best game of the season for both the offense and defense combined. This is the time you want to get hot. You want to figure it out on both sides. And San Antonio might have done that. Chase Garbers, 15 of 21, interception aside, he still had nearly 200 yards passing and a couple of touchdowns. Big bounce back performance from him. The running backs, Anthony McFarland and John Lovett, combining for 31 total touches, 202 total yards, and a touchdown to boot as well. Just dominating on the ground. This is a team now that we've seen it from Chase Garbers. And again, I know I was worried last week, and I think I had good reason to be just based off the performance we got. But Chase Garbers has looked very good more often than he has not. From that one bad game last week compared to the rest of his performance he's had when he was healthy this season, Chase Garbers can throw with the best of them. And now you have this running back duo that really started to emerge in the second half of the season and is coming off of arguably their best performance as a combo. Like Anthony McFarland averaged nearly 10.5 yards per carry in this game just yesterday. So Now, if you're Birmingham, your defense has to come in and they have to be ready for just about anything because this offense seems like they have got it figured out. You have a star wide receiver in John Trey Kirkland, and now this dual threat running back tandem that can catch the football, they can run the football. The offensive line is about as tough as any in the league. You have yourself a hell of a matchup coming up now. And that's not even mentioning just how good this San Antonio defense is. Talking about their ability to lock up the arguably best wide receiver in the UFL this past season in Hakeem Butler, 6 catches, only 59 yards for a guy that had multiple 2-touchdown games where he was crossing the 100-yard mark. It felt like just every other week, if not every week, something along those lines. The defensive front finished the day with 4 sacks and 9 tackles for loss. This is against a team that had a all UFL running back in Jacob Sailors in the backfield. And yeah, he did have some success. He averaged a little over 5 yards a carry, but 9 tackles for loss. You want to talk about a disruptive defensive front? San Antonio is the definition. If you look in Merriam-Webster's dictionary right now, there should be a picture of that San Antonio defense there. And then on top of that, I mean, you look at just the numbers as a whole from the game. Like, yes, they allowed 153 yards through the air, which isn't even a lot to begin with, but when you really start to break it down, 87 of those yards came off of just 3 plays. That's more than half of their air yardage. They shut things down. And aside from maybe 3 plays that got away from them, from the secondary to the big guys up front, this defense dominated from start to finish and was an absolute nightmare because St. Louis, like I said, coming in, hobbled quarterback, they fell behind, and there was not really a point in this game where it felt like they were going to be able to come back and take this victory away from San Antonio. It just 3 points in the first half. You went 2 for 11 on third down. The offense didn't have a drive beyond 6 plays until late in the third quarter. And that was the one that led to AJ McCarron throwing a touchdown pass to Jake Sutherland. There was really just nothing going for them offensively. And if it wasn't for Pita Tomapenu coming through with a big strip sack for 6, that game ends up being even further apart and even uglier. And we're probably talking about a straight up blowout. So had it not been for maybe one big play by the defense, there's really not much to write home about. And I was concerned about how this defense was going to handle the running back duo in San Antonio, but I did not expect them to just basically fold over entirely and just let the running backs go for nearly 200 yards altogether. And it's unfortunate because I feel like now with the way this whole entire season has kind of ended for St. Louis fans are probably walking away from this season thinking to themselves, what if, more than anything else, because you go back to the AJ McCarron ankle injury against the Birmingham Stallions a few weeks ago, and clearly the offense was not necessarily the same without him, but even with him coming back, you kind of have to wonder, did St. Louis make a mistake having AJ McCarron come back last week to try and maybe knock off some rust and get himself ready for the playoffs? Should they have given him another week off to rest and rehabilitate that ankle? I mean, I personally believe AJ McCarron is amongst the best quarterbacks in spring football right now, and I kind of wonder if it was even worth doing that at that point. Maybe just trying to save him for this game, because it was by no means pretty last week, and yes, you came out victorious and you got the game in St. Louis, but I don't know if the result really is any different, whether it was at home or away, if this is the AJ McCarron we were getting this week. So you have to wonder if maybe giving AJ McCarron that extra week to heal, and who knows what he was actually at going in this game here, how much of a difference that would have made. But I think a lot of St. Louis fans are walking away from this game just wondering, what could this game have been like? What could this team have been had it not been for that ankle injury against Birmingham all those weeks ago? Because I know there are a lot of St. Louis fans that are probably sitting at home wondering that today. And now you have to go into next week and watch the team that ultimately caused the injury and the team that just beat you go head-to-head in your stadium. I'm sure there's got to be a sour taste in some St. Louis fans' mouth. So it's definitely one of those things that I am personally well aware of, and I'm sure some of you St. Louis fans are thinking about today, because it's a question I'm asking myself, and I'm not even a Battlehawks fan, but it is definitely something that I've walked away. But ultimately, just not the way you want to see the season end for St. Louis. San Antonio, though, I want to go back to them just quickly and say that for a team that, last season finished as one of the worst teams in the XFL. To go from worst to literally first in the XFL side of things now, going into this merged league of the UFL, you've got to be excited. You've got to heap a ton of praise on the coaching staff, what Wade Phillips has been able to do over there, the players, and the adversity that San Antonio has dealt with this season, because the run game was not there early in the year. You lost Chase Garbers, who looked really good early on and was a massive reason as to why the season started off so well for you. And the defense, which it really started to pick up after those first few weeks and just has become an absolute force, as they're probably the best defensive front in the UFL right now. I don't know if you could probably argue Birmingham, but I think just based off what we've seen in recent weeks, with the Birmingham Stallions now taking a slight step back defensively, San Antonio has the best defense, I would argue, in the UFL at this moment in time. They are just playing at an unbelievable level. Even if they're not forcing a ton of takeaways every single game, they are so disruptive up front. They have a secondary that can lock down guys like Hakeem Butler and make him look like just an average wide receiver. It's very impressive what they're doing right now. And if there was anyone who could match up extremely well against Birmingham, it's going to be this defense now. And we have ourselves quite a difficult game to decide between, because yes, you have the Stallions that are so good. They have won the last 2 spring football championships of their respective spring football league. Now they have to prove it against a team that just knocked them off a couple of weeks ago. There is a lot to look at, a lot to look forward to. Keep an eye on the injury reports, because I think that's going to be key to how this game could potentially shake out next weekend. But there's plenty to get excited about. We got one more game to look at, and that is, of course, the championship game next week's on Sunday. As I said at the beginning, I plan on previewing the game. Most likely probably on Friday is when I'll have that preview out. We'll break down the game. We'll look at the numbers. We'll look at the matchups, who's healthy, who's not, and I will do my absolute very best to try and pick the winner for you all. So if you made it to the end, as always, I greatly appreciate it. Let me know again in the comments, what were your thoughts on this past weekend's games? What were your thoughts on this season overall to this point here? How do you feel about the St. Louis Battlehawks going down in the Dome with a hobbled A.J. McCarron? Do you think this game could have finished up a little bit differently? What are your thoughts on Michigan's woes from the regular season coming back to haunt them in this final game against the Birmingham Stallions, where they fall to now another 0-3 season against the Birmingham Stallions? Let me know in that comment section. But that is it for me. If you made it to the end, again, greatly appreciate it. I'll see you all next time. Have a good one.